In the 1990s, pizza on the West Coast wasn't merely a meal, it was a lifestyle, a ritual, and a cultural touchstone all rolled into one hot, greasy, satisfying experience. It wasn't just about the food itself, though the food was, of course, crucial. It was about the atmosphere, the anticipation, the little moments shared around a circular table or a flickering television set. This was the decade when a simple cardboard box brimming with cheesy goodness could bring together an entire room of wildly different personalities. Teenagers in flannel shirts quoting Wayne's World, skateboarders fresh from a session at the local park, latchkey kids dialing up AOL chat rooms, and Nintendo-obsessed children with sticky fingers and high scores. No matter the crowd, pizza was the equalizer. And at the center of this late-night, post-school, weekend-dominating scene stood three pizza giants that defined an entire era: Pizza Hut, Domino's, and Little Caesars. Each major pizza chain in the 1990s came with its own unique atmosphere, flavor profile, and fiercely loyal customer base. It wasn't just about the pizza, it was about the ritual, the ambiance, and the memories tied to each place. Pizza Hut, in particular, felt like an actual destination, rather than just a place to grab food. In countless California suburbs, families would load into minivans and make their way to the familiar red-roofed buildings that seemed to glow with the promise of greasy comfort food. Inside, the vibe was unmistakable. Dim lighting filtered through stained glass lamps shaped like Tiffany knockoffs, vinyl booths that squeaked when you shifted, and arcade machines humming in the corner. Those iconic, sticky red plastic cups were practically a rite of passage. For some reason, science still can't explain it, Pepsi really did taste better when served in those thick, textured tumblers. Then there was the pizza itself. Pizza Hut's pan pizza stood apart from the rest with its thick, golden, chewy crust that was soaked just enough in butter to make each bite feel indulgent. The crust had a slightly crispy edge, a fluffy center, and a flavor that bordered on addictive. With the right imagination and lighting, it could almost be confused for deep dish, or at least the closest thing California kids could get without flying to Chicago. During weekday afternoons, some locations ran all-you-can-eat lunchtime buffets where you could pile your plate with slices of meat lovers, pepperoni, sausage, or that weird yet wonderful dessert pizza with the sugary crumble topping. And let's not forget the Book It program, a masterstroke of 90s marketing and literacy promotion. Kids would proudly turn in their reading logs in exchange for a free personal pan pizza, making Pizza Hut not just a reward for good grades, but a literal chapter in their childhood development. On Friday nights, the scene was almost always the same. A packed parking lot, a bustling lobby full of families waiting for their name to be called, the smell of melted cheese and garlic hanging thick in the air. You might end up waiting 30, 45, or even 60 minutes just to get seated, and no one really minded. You'd flip through a greasy menu, sip Pepsi, and maybe drop a few quarters into a game of Galaga, because in the end, that first bite of pan pizza made all the waiting feel like part of the experience. It wasn't just worth it. It was a small event, a cornerstone of suburban life, and for many people, it was the warm, delicious punctuation mark to the end of a long week. Domino's, on the other hand, reigned supreme as the undisputed king of convenience. While it may not have boasted the dine-in nostalgia of Pizza Hut or the quirky budget appeal of Little Caesars, Domino's carved out its identity through sheer speed and consistency. Their now iconic 30 minutes or it's free policy wasn't just a marketing gimmick, it became a cultural touchstone. For college students juggling midnight cram sessions and high schoolers fueling late-night gaming marathons, that ticking countdown became a beacon of hope. It wasn't about artisan ingredients or gourmet presentation. It was about getting a hot, edible pizza into your hands before your stomach started eating itself from the inside out. The pizza itself? Look, nobody was writing poetry about a slice of Domino's. The crust leaned heavily on the doughy side, sometimes feeling more like soft bread than a crisp base. The sauce had a bold, tangy punch. Some might say a bit salty, or even slightly metallic if you were really paying attention. But it did the job. The cheese, it was plentiful, melted to a shiny finish, and just rubbery enough to require some effort to pull apart. Yet somehow, that imperfect combination worked, especially when paired with their garlicky dipping sauce or a handful of those crunchy little pepperoncini they occasionally tossed in the box. On the West Coast, Domino's thrived in both the sprawl of suburbia and the tight grid of college towns. You could find their signs glowing under neon-soaked skies in places like Santa Monica, Berkeley, San Diego, and Sacramento, often sandwiched between laundromats and video stores. Their fleet of delivery drivers, often college kids themselves, crisscrossed neighborhoods in faded Civics and Saturns, blasting ska or early Blink-182 from busted speakers, racing against the clock. And long before smartphones were in every pocket, Domino's commercials promised a pseudo-tech thrill with their Domino's Tracker, a fictional update system that played out on screen during Saturday morning cartoons or late-night sitcoms. Kids watched wide-eyed as a cartoon pizza inched closer to delivery. Even if in real life, they just had to stare at the door until the bell rang. Little Caesars? That was always the wild card in the pizza game, a chain that didn't try to be the fanciest or the fastest, but somehow always managed to stick around in the mix. In the early 1990s, their iconic Pizza Pizza catchphrase wasn't just a slogan, it was a promise. You weren't just getting dinner. You were getting 2 medium pizzas for the price of 1, delivered in the most hilariously oversized and impractical fashion. Instead of a traditional pizza box, they served their double pies side by side on a stiff slab of corrugated cardboard, slid unceremoniously into a giant paper sleeve that looked more like a novelty board game than food packaging. It was awkward to carry, impossible to store in the fridge, and yet completely unforgettable. The taste? Well, that depended. Depending on the specific location, and maybe even the time of day, you were either biting into something surprisingly decent or something that tasted like it had been waiting under a heat lamp since noon. Still, there was something charming about the unpredictability. The crusts were sometimes puffy and warm, other times limp and overly chewy, but the sauce was always tangy and the cheese was generously slathered. When you were broke, a high school student with $10 or just too tired to care about artisan toppings, it felt like a gift from the pizza gods. You were fed and you were full. And for those lucky enough to live near a Kmart, Little Caesars became part of a very specific cultural routine. You'd finish wandering the aisles of Kmart, maybe picking up school supplies, a toy, or a couple of VHS tapes on sale, and then, just before leaving, the smell of that unmistakable garlic bread and melted cheese would pull you toward the in-store Little Caesars kiosk. You'd grab a hot and ready, maybe spring for an order of crazy bread if you had change in your pocket, and head home with your bags and your dinner, ready to pop in a movie rental and spend the rest of the evening in couch-bound bliss. It was unpretentious. It was affordable. It was everything the 90s was about. On the West Coast specifically, pizza culture came with a distinctive, sun-drenched flair that set it apart from the rest of the country. It wasn't just about the food, it was the whole experience, woven into the fabric of suburban and coastal life. Picture this. Sun-faded Pizza Hut signs flickering softly beneath towering palm trees, glowing neon half-lit as the sun dipped below the Pacific. Domino's drivers zipped through sprawling SoCal neighborhoods in beat-up Geo Metros with window decals peeling in the heat, music thumping from cheap stereo systems as they navigated endless cul-de-sacs and winding canyon roads to reach their hungry destinations in under 30 minutes. Out along the coast, beach town strip malls were home to humble Little Caesars storefronts, where the scent of bargain crust mingled with salt air and tanning lotion. The storefronts framed by sand-dusted sidewalks and bikes leaned casually against stucco walls. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed above plastic chairs and the hum of old soda fountains, where teens in flip-flops and oversized band tees lined up for a hot and ready box after long afternoons spent surfing, skating, or just loitering with friends. Pizza slices were scarfed down in parking lots before punk shows in Santa Cruz, grease soaking through paper plates as kids argued about set times and the latest underground zines. LAN parties in suburban garages across Orange County saw towers of pizza boxes stacked beside CRT monitors, the smell of pepperoni mixing with the whir of Dusty Fans and Mountain Dew. Back home, parents placed pizza orders from beige cordless kitchen phones, cradling the handset between shoulder and ear while flipping through TV channels or helping with homework. The ritual was familiar, comforting, part of the weekly rhythm. The kids, meanwhile, eagerly gathered around the coffee table, arguing over who got to open the box first, who got the last breadstick, or who would get the largest scoop of garlic butter from the little plastic cup. Even that mattered. Was the pizza better in the 90s? From a strictly culinary standpoint, comparing ingredients, dough fermentation, artisan technique, probably not. Objectively, the crust may have been a little too greasy, the sauce a little too sweet, the cheese a little too rubbery. But if you were a kid, a teenager, or even a stressed-out college student at the time, none of that mattered. Because subjectively, on a level that defies star ratings and food critics' snobbery, the pizza was absolutely, undeniably better. It wasn't about perfection, it was about the moment. The crusts were oilier, sometimes soaking through the paper plate before you could even take your second bite. But that sheen of oil added character. It meant you were eating something indulgent, something joyful. The toppings were piled on with the kind of reckless generosity you just don't see anymore. Pepperoni curled at the edges, holding little pools of orange grease like trophies. Mushrooms came canned, not fresh, and nobody cared. The green peppers were soft, not crunchy, and that was fine too. Even the cheese pulled longer back then, stretching from slice to mouth like it was part of the experience, a tiny edible performance. And the drinks, Crystal Pepsi, Surge, or a frosty can of Shasta grabbed from the garage fridge, somehow made it all better. The fizz hit different when paired with that salty, savory bite. You didn't worry about calories, macros, or sodium content. You worried about whether there'd be enough left for seconds, or if your friend would eat the last slice while you were in the bathroom. Pizza in the 90s didn't need to be gourmet, it just needed to show up hot in a box, with a side of crazy bread or breadsticks slathered in garlic butter. It was the soundtrack to sleepovers, the fuel for weekend movie marathons, and the reward for surviving another week of school. It was always present, on coffee tables during after-school hangouts, under UV-lit booths at Pizza Hut, or passed around by the slice on living room floors during birthday parties and lawn nights. And those summers? They felt like they lasted forever, stretching out under the hum of ceiling fans and the scent of reheated slices in the microwave. In hindsight, the real winner of the 90s pizza wars wasn't just one chain. It wasn't Pizza Hut's pan crust, Domino's delivery times, or Little Caesar's 2-for-1 gimmick. It was the feeling that great pizza was never far away, that it was affordable, accessible, and always associated with something good, something memorable. It was about knowing that for a few bucks, you could buy an experience. You could taste comfort, celebration, and belonging, all layered between crust, sauce, and cheese. And that, more than anything, made the pizza unforgettable.
Come along, let's sing, where the joy will bring. Tune into the beat, feel the magic, it's true. Channel 199 X, we're here just for you.